Hey guys, Alex Hamilton, YouRise Education. Summer is nearing its end, which means that the round 1 deadline for MBA programs isn't too far off. So today, I wanted to talk a little bit about how I got into the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. Right now, I'm going to provide a holistic overview of my application, so I won't be digging too far into the specifics right now. Before we hop in, if you enjoy this type of content, then be sure to like and subscribe so you stay up to date with all the latest videos that I have coming out. So let's get into it. The first thing to take note of when discussing MBA admissions is that statistics can be misleading. Whereas the most selective undergraduate admittance rates are beneath 10%, top MBA programs can have admittance rates as high as 25%. Still, this depends on the type of application, and in my case, I chose round 1 in September of 2021 because I felt more or less ready by that point, and I didn't see the need to try to compete with candidates in later rounds. Now, the reason behind the seemingly high admission statistics in these MBA programs is that MBA applications are much more self-selecting. MBA applications tend to take a lot more time compared to undergraduate applications, and candidates tend not to choose this path until they've already ascertained whether or not an MBA is right for them. Plus, MBA programs compared to other grad programs tend to have a pretty high amount of reapplicants who decide to apply again after gaining additional experience in the workplace. This selectivity lends itself to myths, like the idea that you can't gain admittance to a top MBA program unless you have experience at a blue-chip firm in investment banking, consulting, or the corporate world. But the fact is, the MBA is a Master of Business Administration, not a Master of Finance nor of Accounting. The MBA, by its nature, is a versatile degree. You can focus in on an area like finance or accounting if you like, but it's not necessary to have that kind of experience going into the application. Instead, what's most important is that your reasons for selecting an MBA make sense, and they suggest a great return on investment for the school should they admit you. This brings us to the bedrock of my MBA application, my goals. When I was writing about my goals, I made sure that my short-term and long-term goals were complementary. My short-term goal was to expand the educational company I co-founded, while the long-term goal was to increase university access in nations such as China. Applying for an MBA made a lot of sense to me because my work experience was very network and entrepreneurial driven. However, I know it can feel really discouraging when you're completing the MBA application and find that your employer is not recognized because everything that you've done is at either a small startup or at just a very, very tiny company, besides work that you might have done in fast food as a teenager. In any case, my pre-MBA work experience totaled 5 years, which is in line with the average. 3 of those years were spent at an educational consulting firm in China, where I received 2 promotions. The other 2 years were at a startup I co-founded in the same industry. I also had some part-time freelance consulting work, but still, I never had experience at a company with more than 50 employees. While this spoke highly of my team building and management experience, I knew that not having experience at a larger firm would make it very difficult for the AdComs to assess the scope of my successes. On the bright side, MBA admissions are holistic, and I believe where I was able to make up for this is in the GMAT. Most top programs have no preference between the GMAT and the GRE for MBA admissions, but I stuck with the traditional choice here. I feel that I'm better with grammar compared to vocabulary, so the GMAT seemed like a more natural choice. Plus, although the GMAT does have a tougher quant section, the exam is a bit more forgiving in terms of the number of questions you can miss and still obtain a top score. The first time I took the GMAT, with about 4 weeks of practice using prep books, I earned a 730. Though this is a decent score, it's fairly pedestrian for top MBA programs, so I looked over my score report to assess my shortcomings before retaking the exam 2 weeks later. For instance, seeing that I struggle with data sufficiency geometry questions, I went on to GMAT Club and I went through the hardest questions I could find within that category. The second time I took the exam, 2 weeks later, I earned a 760 with a 50 in the quantitative section and a 44 in the verbal section. Another preference I think that might have helped me with this is that in both cases, I took the exam at a test center. In doing so, it took off the pressure of having to prepare my testing space, and it allowed me more time to get in the zone ahead of starting the exam. Aside from test scores, the other important number in evaluating MBA applications is GPA. My undergraduate school, Brown, doesn't officially calculate GPA, instead leaving it to students to do so if a figure is required. Based on the traditional 4.0 scale and ignoring the SNC or pass-fail courses that I took at Brown, my GPA was a 3.8, and I graduated with honors on my way to earning my BSc in neuroscience. Due to the nature of my degree, I had some pretty rigorous coursework, as well as some business-related courses such as calculus, statistics, and economics. Taking Chinese every semester of my college career also helped set me apart. The other component of the college experience is in extracurriculars, and here I think I was also able to make up for my lack of blue chip work experience. Throughout my time at Brown, I was involved in leadership across various service organizations, including Health Leads, China Care, and Questbridge. I also had experience as a teaching assistant, researcher at a hospital, and player on an intramural basketball team. My teaching and mentoring experience was especially critical in fostering my passion for education, and even after graduation, I continued to do some volunteering to help students apply to college. These experiences also complemented my career in educational consulting, where I've been able to make many professional connections. When it was time to seek letters of recommendation, I realized that I didn't know anyone affiliated with the University of Chicago well enough who could write me a letter. However, I was able to have a colleague who was completing an MBA of her own write a recommendation for me, as well as a client that I had helped with consulting part-time when he was launching a business. And I feel that both of these letters were able to provide a diverse set of perspectives regarding my unique work experience. As for my essays, I used the open-ended prompt to showcase my fun side and my enjoyment of writing by highlighting some of the various seemingly unrelated stories that I underwent throughout my life and tying it into a singular narrative. Then I took the Why Booth prompt as an opportunity to highlight the research that I had done into the program. Booth is really awesome because they allow students to take courses at other UChicago schools, and they don't have any required courses except for the lead course, which is taken during the first quarter. This kind of academic freedom and rigor reminded me a lot of my undergraduate time at Brown, where the open curriculum allowed me to explore a wide variety of subjects, and this is something I made sure to highlight in that essay. Plus, Booth's presence on multiple continents and their strong startup culture complemented my professional goals and experiences. Of course, I also rounded out the essays highlighting the various Booth-specific resources that are available, including the different courses, the renowned professors, the different kinds of opportunities like the New Venture Challenge, the different organizations I wanted to be a part of, and so on, to really showcase that I'd done my homework. With all this research in mind, I was more than confident in tackling the interview. When preparing for the interview, I reached out to current students through the Booth website to learn a little bit more about their experience. And I also attended some online events, such as one that focused on the impact imparted by Booth graduates. After my interviewer and I connected via email, I found that he was involved in consulting, which was great because that was very similar to my background. The interview itself included a lot of typical questions such as why Booth and why an MBA and why now? But there were also a few difficult ones that I hadn't exactly anticipated, such as a behavioral question that centered around why would I not need an MBA? For these kind of tricky questions, which always seem to appear no matter how much prep you do, I acknowledge their difficulty in the interview. And I think that by doing so, I was able to take some of the pressure and tension out of the room and give me a few extra seconds to reason through my answer out loud. For instance, with the why don't I need an MBA question, I talked a little bit about my current successes and how an MBA wasn't integral to what I wanted to do in my career, but I made sure to reiterate how an MBA and Booth specifically, through their network and resources, could help me achieve my goals on a grander scale. Towards the end, I had the opportunity to ask the interviewer some questions of my own, such as what courses does he recommend amid the immense academic freedom at Booth? Ultimately, we had a really long and enjoyable conversation, and I felt that it went pretty well. But after all this, I still ended up being placed on the waitlist. I think a big reason why I was waitlisted as I alluded to earlier, is my non-traditional background. Still, I recognize that Booth, being one of the most selective institutions in the world, would not have just waitlisted me if they had no interest. And so I took this as an opportunity to do a little bit more work in showcasing what value I could bring to the school and why the school was a right fit for me. Among the extra work that I put into my application, I conducted further outreach to the Booth community. I attended different events, including a master class taught on Zoom by one of Booth's renowned professors, and I created a 1-minute waitlist video. In this waitlist video, I really leaned into my entrepreneurial, non-traditional background, and I highlighted how rather than being a weakness, it was a strength, and it would allow me to contribute to the Booth community. Through these additional efforts, as well as the work that I put into round 1, I was admitted to Booth during round 2 with a generous scholarship. I understand that many of the aspects of my application may not apply to you, and that many of the steps that I took, such as visiting Booth's campus when filming my waitlist video, may not be possible. What I hope that you take away from this video is to not lose hope. Gaining admittance to a top MBA program like Booth is not easy, but with the right approach, adequate knowledge of the program, and an in-depth awareness of your strengths and weaknesses, you can make it there, even if that means getting off the waitlist. With that being said, be sure to comment down below what you think of this video, and if you're interested in Booth, feel free to share where you are in the process. Of course, you should also take a look at some of the other content I have about Booth so that you can ensure that your program research is off to a great start. Lastly, if you found this video helpful, then be sure to give a like and subscribe and hit the bell so you stay up to date. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.